Good morning, it's Seth from Red Eye Garage. Today we're going to talk about leaf springs. This is a crusty old import spring that's been on my Jeep for a long time. This is a USA made spring from Kaiser Willys. A couple of key features: military wrap on this end, and it's ready to accept a factory C shackle. Bronze bushing installed on the other end, ready for your spring bolt. These are made in the USA. This is the heavy duty 10 leaf pack. This is a front spring. We're going to install all 4 new USA made springs on this Cj2A. This is a C shackle from a Willys Jeep. One of the important things to remember is the frame side of the C shackle is always normal right hand thread. Let me show you where the left hand threads go. Every one of the frame side mounts of your C shackle will be right hand thread. The driver's side spring on the front has a left-hand thread, and the passenger side rear on the spring is left-hand thread. And the reason for this, if you notice when I turn this, it's pulling the wrap of that spring tighter, and that's supposed to prevent these from backing out as the spring goes up and down. Whenever I'm replacing leaf springs, I only like to do one at a time. If you're building your Jeep, you're going to have the axle will be loose, but if you're just replacing springs, by doing one at a time, we don't have to worry about things like brake lines, drive shafts, or steering linkages, because I don't really move the axle. So I support the frame of the Jeep and the axle, remove one spring, replace it, move to the next. More often than not, our Jeeps are old and rusty, and you end up having to cut things to get them apart. And if that's the case, Kaiser Willys also sells all the new U-bolts and hardware that you need to do this job. Step 1, remove the tire. Make sure the frame and the axle are safe and supported, and remove your U-bolts. As you remove the last U-bolt, the spring plate and shock absorber will come off with it. So get the spring plate free, and it's totally up to you. You can remove the shock from the mount before or after you take off the U-bolts. Personally, I find it easier just to leave it on there. Then you can move it a lot more freely. Pull the little pin out, and now I can work on it right out here and pull the spring plate off, but that's up to you. Come to the rear spring bolt. I like to use a pair of side cutters. Grab the old pin, pull it out, and remove the spring bolt. That came out really easy. I'm going to leave the bolt in here until I get the front shackle off. If you remember our discussion from the beginning of the video, this is the driver's side front, so this spring eye will be the left-hand thread, so remember to go the opposite direction of the rest of them. Then switch your tool or ratchet to reverse. Just support your spring. I always try to quickly come back through and thread the left-hand thread back onto the shackle, so that, because if you get them all mixed up, then you got to go through each one and make sure it's on the right thread. We are cruising right along. Now I'm just popping out the rear spring bolt. Now I'm going to prep the new spring. I do like to take a little bit of grease and pump it into the bushing and the eye on the other end. Once the bolt's in, put your nut on the back, and I won't tighten this or put a pin in it until everything's installed. Making sure the left-hand thread is on the bottom. Bring my shackle through from the back. You got to put them both through at the same time. And get it started by hand. So remember, normal right-hand thread on top. Get a little help from my knee here, and left-hand thread on the bottom. Switch back to normal direction. When you're tightening these up, they need to be snug enough that all the gaps are closed up and it's not going to vibrate loose, but not so tight that it limits movement. So if you get everything back together and you jump on the bumper and nothing's moving, you might have the shackles or the rear spring bolt way too tight. Now that our spring bolt and shackle are installed, we just have to line up the pin on the spring with the hole in the perch on the axle. Once it lines up, it'll drop right down on there. Install the spring plate and drop your U-bolts down over the axle tube. The U-bolts are tight, and I'm patiently waiting for my shock to extend and slide it onto the mount. Alright, both new springs are installed in the front. You can see how it sits. I'm real happy with the stance. Everything fit really well. I'm going to move on to the rear springs. I'm not going to show it to you in the video because it's the exact same procedure we just did. So just repeat that in the rear. Then I'm going to take the Jeep outside and we'll see how it sits. Well, there it is. You can see how it sits. Let me give you a real quick glance of how it looks from all four corners. That's the install of the leaf springs. Not much more to say here other than they fit great, but the real test is going to be on the road. So make sure you follow along for the next video where we take this thing out. We'll set up a camera, go for a ride, and I'll give you my take on how it performs. If you'd like to try out any of these parts on your Jeep, I'll put links to everything I used today down in the description of this video. Feel free to use code REDEYEGARAGE10 at your Kaiser Willys checkout. You'll save 10% on your whole order. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.